Hey everyone, welcome to MAHA Mom's podcast with Christine and myself, Dr. Lisa, where moms can come together and share how to navigate a toxic world and live a healthy life. Our mission is to educate how we address childhood and adult illnesses using homeopathy and functional medicine. And our discussions are for informational and educational purposes only. They're not meant to cure or treat any conditions or, of course, replace your medical care or any care with a healthcare practitioner. We want people to know that there are natural alternative solutions available. So hit subscribe and follow us on social media and check our websites out too. All right, let's get started. So today's podcast is my story, but let's first have Christine say hello and
hi guys.
the driver's seat this time.
Oh, that sounds good. It's Lisa's turn to go in the hot seat.
Yes.
So where do you want to start? Going after you go to college or off to college?
It's like, how about
I want to hear what the moms taught you at college when you were talking about.
Oh, I know. I'm going to start where you did. So
Okay.
The podcast before us was Christine's story, which is a great story. It's one of my favorites. So we started off where we both were working at a surf shop together in our high school years. And then we went in our separate directions. And I went to the University of Delaware. And my story, I'm not going to get into everything. Obviously, we're going to summarize this. I was, you're going to laugh. I was pre-law because my father's a lawyer. Didn't like that. I switched over to pre-med because I loved the anatomy classes and stuff like that. And then got hurt my neck and my arm, my shoulder. And someone said, there's a chiropractor like right up on Main Street. It's like that main street that runs through the college where everything happens. So I went to one and he fixed my neck. But I noticed that here's one of these aha moments where I'm like, why are my allergies not happening? Where's my drip? Where's my sinus problem? And every spring I would get like clockwork, every spring and fall, I would get sinus infection, laryngitis, and then bronchitis my whole life. And they would give me allergy shots, histamine, basically antihistamine or whatever, put me to sleep and you'd feel better. But, and antibiotics for the bronchitis. So I grew up with all of that. And so I was like, of course, I'm a very outlier. So, I ask questions, I raise my hands. I'm that person in classroom that everyone else stop asking questions. So I asked the chiropractor, hey, anything got to do with my neck? I don't know why I even said this, by the way, but I was like, anything you doing something with my neck, why would that affect my sinuses? And he was all happy. And he shows me the chart and he explains, and this makes sense, that your nerves, your brain, controls everything in the body, but you have a spinal cord, which is the continuation of your brain. Basically, it's all the fluid. And then off of that, just like a tree, like a trunk of a tree comes branches, are the nerves. The nerves go to the organs. So the brain is going to have to control the organs. If something's not working properly, it's usually a miscommunication between the brain and the organ. So this was the first time I've ever heard this stuff. I was like, what? Yeah. And so he's like, when I'm adjusting your neck, which was all out of place, it's allowing now the energy between the two communication systems. So now the brain can tell the sinuses to work properly, tell your throat to work properly. And so now I had drainage, and I just had a more functioning nervous system. And whether you believe that or not, my allergies went away, which there's not one medical visit that did it for my whole life. So I couldn't be a medical doctor. I was like, I can't do this because my story up to, 19 years old, I didn't get help. So for my story, it was like, well, why would I do this to other people? Why wouldn't I do chiropractic? And I said to myself, because my father and my mom, and they were like, why are you leaving? Why would you do this? And I said, if I could help one person not suffer from allergies and chronic bronchitis, I never got pneumonia, but I got it all the way. The cough was bad. And I would be like, if I help one person, I've served God. Like I've done my part in the world. I don't got to, if I can help 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, I've served my purpose. That's my gift. So I went to my guidance counselor and said, I got to drop out of pre-med. What do I do? She's like, I didn't know at the time. They just opened a nutrition college in Delaware. It's one of the first ones. And she was in charge. So she was like, hey, what about nutrition? Because you can't major at the time in anything towards chiropractic. Now you can like kind of go in that direction. So I was like, well, okay. And I thought, be honest with you, I thought nutrition would be easier than pre-med. I thought, well, what is it? Vitamins? Well, it was all chemistry. It was all biochem, which is literally out of the science field, my worst.
Yeah,
So it was
I took a
hard.
nursing
And I was like,
nutrition and it was
oh
impressive.
man, you know.
Yeah.
So what I said to you before is what you said on your podcast, where you were going towards nursing and you didn't want to poke people. And
Yeah.
I had to do the IV. So you were poking them, but I was making the bags, the solutions. So I had to do the boring.
Isn't
Boring.
it so weird how it goes right in like butter though? Did you have to
I still
actually?
to this day watch people put IVs in because I'm so fascinated that you don't bleed. Like if you like, how does that how does it go right in and no blood comes at least out the little cut where it goes in? Like I'm one of those people who stare at it. I watch surgeries.
Oh,
I'm
I
weird.
can't. I gotta look the other way.
I don't. So all right, story is I end up in chiropractic school out in California. And my point of the nutrition, I didn't get my registered dietitian because I literally was telling my dad this other day, I didn't enjoy it. Like I didn't want to do menus in a cafeteria. I didn't want to, and I'm not saying the people who do this that it's dumb. Like there's a gift for everybody. But for me, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand the hospital. I couldn't stand the IVs. I couldn't stand, making a menu of steak for someone who just had a heart attack and giving the wrong foods for the cancer ward. Like I was like, this isn't me. I just want to get people better. Like
It's depressing.
I
This
decided to
weight
be a
to go out.
chiropractor. And I came from Jersey like you, which was very medicinal, and that's fine. But I didn't know that back then. I didn't really even realize that Jersey's run by pharma. I was just like too naive. And I go out to California and I was like, what is this? And I went into I went from sick land to healthy land. And I was like, this is crazy. And so I just was in this world for 4 years of every Friday in school, we had seminars that we had to go to and nobody skipped them because they were so fascinating. And I learned about pharma, big pharma. I learned about all the things that it took you forever to learn through your journey. I learned in school and I was just lucky. And I said, I learned about the sticks. I learned about the immune system. I learned about kids being born there, I learned neurology, embryology, all of it. And all the controversial topics, they would have debates every Friday and we would hear both sides of it. And it was just enlightening, like beyond anything. And I've read all those books that Shot in the Dark and, Beyond Antibiotics and all those books. And some of those speakers came to the school and it was just, I'm 20 years old,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And
I went to home births. These women that I was telling you about in chiropractic school, they taught me so much, these women. Coming to class with their baby. And I know a lot of this is more known now, but you're talking 1993, babies are wrapped to them. And I'm like, oh, nobody breastfed in New Jersey. I was just kind of like, why's your baby attached to you? I ask questions. I never really watched breastfeeding, so it's just kind of like learning all about that. And then, I went to home births that were absolutely the most beautiful thing ever. And I was like, why would you do this? Why aren't you in a hospital? What are you crazy? And all my fear is just like regurgitating out in California. But I'm a very open person, right? I'm very open-minded. So I'm just learning all these things. And I didn't know midwifery was illegal out there when I was out there. So we had to keep it all quiet. And
it has
just
to
these
be so
crazy things.
eye-opening. Well, you wouldn't find that in New Jersey back then, for sure. These days,
No,
maybe, but not back
every
then.
corner was this health food type food store, like what we know today to be more like Whole Oats or Whole Foods, or, back then they had them all over the place. And I was just like, organic foods. Like I didn't even know all the topics. And then Christine, when I'd come back to Jersey to visit my family, you would get right off the plane in Newark and everyone's like smoking, like sucking down these sticks that you never
McDonald's.
saw in California. Everybody's on their little rollerblades and everybody's healthy. You almost feel like I wanted it to rain so I can stay inside and read a book and not work out. You know what I mean? Like everybody's so healthy. I was like, oh, this is like pressure. I go back to Jersey. I go to a restaurant with my mom and dad, and I'm like, I'm coughing because everyone's smoking in the restaurant. And I didn't realize that was banned back then. And so you don't realize the difference between the two worlds because of, you're living in one fishbowl and then you go to another one.
Yeah, that must have been awesome though. I wouldn't have wanted to leave.
I know. And so I started learning all that stuff. Like, just these women were just phenomenal. Like if they're in my house and I'm putting on like a lotion, I can't even think of a brand. And they're like, what is in that? I'm like, what do you mean? What's in it? And they're like, did you look what's in it? And I was like, why would I look what's in it? And so they turn around. They're like, you can't have this. I was like, and we didn't have a Google thing. I was like, well, is it dangerous? Like, it's just stuff. I
Mhm.
had UTI. I remember being sick a few times. So we go to the clinic on campus and I'm like, I need an antibiotic. And they're like, no, you're gonna take some cranberry, you're gonna do some garlic, you're gonna take a couple of these homeopathic pills, and you're gonna be fine. And I was like, oh, I might die if I don't take the antibiotic. Like,
Yeah, well, that's how when I was like, you could cure like
yeah,
strep throat with
cranberry.
a belladonna. Like, I thought you definitely needed antibiotics for strep throat.
Yeah. And he's like, no, you keep getting the UTIs because of the antibiotics. And then they hand me the book Beyond Antibiotics, which by the way is one of the best books ever written.
Oh,
It's
I have
called
to get
Beyond
that.
Antibiotics. Um, and then they start talking about the whole perpetual thing that you're doing to your body, by ruining it with, antibiotics. So I just was like, you know, um,
Causing allergies and things like that. I didn't know. We were on them twice a month.
yeah.
We were so sick.
So I graduate from there. And we moved back to Jersey, which is kind of like comical because I don't know what we were thinking. Like, I think we thought, okay, Jersey caught up by now. We come back there. And I think the only reason we moved back there was family. And I have to say that
It's
because
so hard not to
I
leave.
still to this day don't fit in. I mean, I am a Jersey girl, true and true, but I don't know what to say about it. There's nothing to say. There's no words for this. I come back and I immediately get pregnant. I'm opening a practice. I'm having a home birth. Um, and I'm looking for, food, like real food to feed the babies, to feed me, to feed Carl. And so like there's no stores that have
Mm-mm.
organic. My mother's like, what is that? I'm like, oh my gosh, I went back to like, I just went back 10 years in my whole life. Like I was like, oh my gosh. And so I had to drive to Princeton. Princeton was really the most progressive
No.
area. So that's where my midwife was. That's where I would food shop. Um, it was crazy. And they didn't really worry too much about organic back then because you really, really couldn't find it.
Hard,
We
yeah.
had it was a tough thing, but I made me I had the home births, made my own baby foods and, the whole thing. Um, and so did my best to raise them as naturally as I can. Um, in a world that everybody around me was calling me crazy. And I little had interventions where, my mom would get people to try to, talk me into like, she shouldn't really have a home birth, or she really should do it in the hospital, or she should really do it this. They're all worried and they're all afraid, and
Yeah.
all came from love, you know. Um, and everything was pretty good until my first one was born with some neurological issues that we knew because we had neurology for
Mm.
years at graduate school. And so that's when we were like, we're not sticking him because there's going to be problems. We knew that 4 years
Yeah.
of that.
Oh
That
God. Oh
was
my
just,
goodness.
we knew. So we avoided that. And then the middle one had some issues as well. We waited on that. And so that was just what we did with the three of them because they all had issues.
Mm.
And so we worked on those issues as well. I have a friend that was an OT, and the breastfeeding was a whole fiasco for me too because he was biting and we didn't know what tongue tied was then. I didn't know he had motor neuron issues, very floppy. So, when you and I talk about the POTS and
The Ehlers-Danlos, yeah, the floppy tone.
yeah,
All
he
the
had
things that go along with
yeah,
it.
yeah, just a lot of things you don't know. And so there's definitely something going on with them. Um,
Yeah. Jack couldn't hold his head up and he would like, that tummy time thing.
yeah,
He would like put it up and he'd be like, "Wah," and like hit the ground. It was horrible.
yeah. My middle one never crawled, and that's a big sign. Crawling is really important, and he never crawled. He just kind of pulled himself, dragged his
Yeah.
legs. Um, um, so all hell broke loose in my life when they went to preschool, and my firstborn definitely had issues, but he was thriving in school, so he was doing fine, but the middle one wasn't. So he got kicked out of I think all the preschools that were around me. I homeschooled them as long as I could. I just pulled everybody out and just I did what I could. But because I had this degree, I had to work
Yeah.
So I kind of screwed myself in that way. Like I learned so much. So if I didn't do it, I wouldn't know all this stuff. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to work. I can't homeschool them. So that was one of my struggles because I would homeschool if I had a choice.
If I could do it over, I would too.
Yeah, or if I had a community, right? Where like I could work 2 days. If 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 we all knew what we knew
Yeah.
now, like girls,
Kind
if
of
you
like
guys
our
could get yourself
retirement
together, MAHA moms,
community.
do it. Because school
Yep.
was a disaster for me. It's the biggest regret I have. Just regret it. It's my biggest regret. If you
Mhm.
asked me what do you regret, I'd be like, I would never send my kids to public. One went to private, one went to public. Didn't even matter. Disaster.
Yeah.
Wouldn't do it. And I'm strong about that because my story is hellish, hellacious.
Yeah.
Um, and what was
Yeah.
happening with Luke was that I didn't know what it was. Like you said, you didn't really know what mast cell was until, they're diagnosing you with this stuff. Is um sensory processing disorder, which basically meant that the sounds, your information comes in your body through sound, smell, taste, touch, and proprioception, which is where your body is in space and time. Your body just knows where you are. So kind of like your balance and stuff, right?
And
And
that's connected
so,
to academics.
yeah, information was coming in his body and not being interpreted correctly. And so your output wasn't correct. So what I was understanding as I was researching this was the information would come in, he would feel pain and he would run. So I
Mhm.
had a runner. The other child, I didn't realize the firstborn was what we call a seeker. So information would come in and he would seek for, I guess what happens is, you ever see kids that they love to be pressed, or you can roll them up, or they want to be hugged, or so they need the other one. If you
Oh,
touch
the
them,
ones that
they
need the
run.
pressure.
Yeah. So there's two types of sensory processing where
Yeah.
you could have a child who you touch them and it hurts them, so they run, and the other one is hurting and needs pressure for the pain to go away. So it's a real thing, and
Yeah,
it
and then
now
having
today is
two
on the spectrum.
opposites.
Yeah. So every Luke couldn't handle classroom. He couldn't handle school. Think about the sounds, the
Yeah.
bus, getting off the bus, all the people, the crowds, getting into the classroom and the noises, the smells. He couldn't do transitioning. His brain could not process that fast enough. So in kindergarten at the time, it was like these stupid stations where, and it's just dealing with just all the stupidness of the way school is, where these kids have to be robots. And I was like, I can't do this. Like he just couldn't physically do it. And the reason why I get so angry about the topic is because they're like, he can do it, he just won't do it. I'm like, no, he can't physically do it. Like, read a book.
Oh, and
Like
the
he can't
fluorescent
physically do it.
lighting. Yeah, like all these inputs are, and they're not,
Yeah.
the Lysol and it's coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
They're
So as
like,
he was moving up in the grades, he was belligerent, he was an idiot, like all these names. And it was just a horrible experience. We had a music teacher that I didn't know this because I'm not there, but you would find out what they did to your kid later. From the kids would go home and tell their moms because they were uncomfortable with it, and then they would call me. But like he had like a zip up jacket, and she made him zip it up, put his hood over him, and put him in the corner, and
no.
made him sit there almost like the dunce days. And he gladly did it because for him he was like, oh, I don't have to deal with her.
Yeah, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Some of the teachers had this thing where if he was misbehaving, and honestly it wasn't misbehaving, it was he would start tapping his foot and tapping and that's the energy coming up, and that's
Yeah.
like that fight or flight is about to happen, and you could see it. And they'd just be like, they take the it didn't matter what I did, I gave him fidget toys, they take the fidget toys away, stop it, sit still. And it's like, let him let him play with the fidget
Yeah.
toys, so the energy goes somewhere.
They're meant to move around.
He had a couple really good teachers that taught me a lot,
Yeah.
which those are the ones that I went in and he'd have 3 desks. I go, why does my son have 3 desks? And they're like, because when the energy happens, he'll just say, can I go over to the other desk and do math over there? And I'll be like, sure. So she let him take his math book and go over there. And he wants to be more near the sun. Like, and it's just like you said, or he goes, can I just walk around the room and listen? And one of his special ed teachers, because I had to fight the school district. This is why you never saw me, and I went into my hole. I'm fighting the school district that I graduated from, top of the class. I was super proud of. Now I'm fighting them for just basic rights.
Yeah, we dealt with the same child study team, and I got lots of stories too from
Yeah,
them.
we are child study team warriors. And so now I'm fighting for basic disability rights for a child. And when I started doing that, I had all these moms behind Luke, because Luke is 24. It started when he was 4, so it's 20 years ago. And I warned them how many kids are about to come up due to the sticks, due to the toxic fishbowl they're living in, due to all the foods that these kids are eating, due to how crappy everything is around these children's lives, that you're going to about to have an explosive Asperger's, which now is autism spectrum disorders.
Yeah.
And there's an actual, I wasn't wrong. So I was like, trying and the part of where I was really frustrated, which you guys probably hear some of my anger, is that my background's neurology, chiropractic, and now nutrition, and today functional medicine. I'm not the educator. I don't have the bachelor's and the doctorate in education.
Yeah.
I'm not a special education educator. So you should be able to deal with your world. I'm dealing with my world. You come in with a, herniated disc. I'm not asking you, what do I do?
No.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I said to them, "Oh, you're going to get surgery, and when you're on the desk, when you're laying there, you're going to be hoping that the guy knows what to do." So when my kids, my kids got, I went to the top neurologists in the States, giving them, the thick medical neurology report. And I didn't do a half-ass one. I did the real thing. He had the autism studies, and he had the, I didn't just go. I don't want to put anybody down here, but sometimes you just go to one doctor who just gives you the diagnosis on a pad. We didn't do that. We did full-on testing. We did learning. We did OT, PT, auditory processing, sensory processing, with full autism testing. It took us all summer, one summer. So what happened was, I eventually got him in special ed, and our life changed, because they were able, those women and the men are amazing. They can handle these children, and my life changed. And then they were open to what I knew. I was open to what they knew, and it started to get really better. And that's where I wrote the book, which is behind me, because the moms that were coming up behind me, everyone was like, "Oh, call Mrs. Solcenti, call Mrs. Solcenti. You have to talk to her." And I was like, I couldn't run a chiropractic business, do 3
Yeah.
kids,
Right.
and then answer and advocate for every mom, which was so many moms. And so guidance counselors were buying my book and handing them out. So, but what I wound up did is I spent every night for maybe 6 months just writing everything I did into a book. So I started handing them out to moms. I didn't write the book to be, rich. I did
Yeah.
it so I could say, I know what you're going to ask me. This is what I did.
Yeah.
Follow this, you know?
Yeah.
So what happened so my story moves on to, like, I have kids at home, they're eating healthy. And this is the part I want people to understand. My fishbowl was pretty clean compared to your story,
Yeah.
right? I already knew all this stuff. So like, they were already not sick. They were eating organic. They were eating healthy foods. You know what I mean? Like, I used clean baby stuff. I learned about it all, but
Oh,
beforehand.
yeah.
So I had this low toxic load, but I was still having these kids with problems. I do feel like you said, they were genetically born this way, genetically disposed to this. If I loaded up toxins on them, it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
It already was a nightmare, but it would have been even worse. So we do believe if we did overstick them, they would have been
Yeah.
damaged.
Even any of the other stuff. They're so
Yeah, and they have
now.
MTHFR, which I didn't know then, but now we know it.
Yeah.
Um, But the part I want to make is, there were still issues. I was still struggling. So this is where, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Um, so what I started doing is, I have to get these EUs, which are continuing education credits. Every 2 years we have to have like 30 credits. So I started saying, well, I'm kind of getting, well, I can keep going to chiropractic seminars. I'm not really going to learn anything for my kids. So I started going to what we call nutrition seminars, specifically by chiropractors, MDs, and some functional people that really, there was no functional medicine yet, but these were people dabbling in it. And they were doing like some lab testing, and it was very, very new, but it was leaky gut. And
Yeah.
it was very quiet. There was a couple seminars, and we were the beginning. I proudly put myself into this scenario. We were very the beginning of this. And we were just sharing the research that was out there, and then also what we were all doing in our practices. So I wasn't yet doing it. I took what they were doing and started doing it in my home. And that's when Luke started excelling in his therapies. And I realized, oh my gosh, there's a gut brain connection. I was like, okay, there's a nervous system connection, but there's a gut connection. So we could say the gut is the second brain, or the nervous
Yeah.
system is the first brain. I don't care. They all are important.
Oh, yeah.
So what we noticed was his speech got better, his OT got better, his anger management got better, his sensory ability to integrate things was getting better. His nervous system was working itself out. It was balancing. And the reason for it is, which we can get into definitely more podcasts, is that when your gut isn't working properly, it doesn't do some things that are really needed. It's 20 something feet long. It's the biggest surface area inside the body. And the skin is the biggest surface area outside the body. And when you were talking in your podcast last, you were mentioning anaphylactic shock, histamines, everything that was making you so sick. We didn't know this at the time when you were going through this, but we know today 80% of your immune system is in the gut. So you have your mast cells, which are throughout the body, but you have these gut cells. And when they're attacking, like you said, things that are in foods, right?
Yeah.
They might
Well, even
attack
just the
pests.
pesticides,
What?
even just the pesticides, aren't they're made to make the bug's stomach explode. So what do we think when we eat it on a bigger, scale,
Right.
what's happening to us?
Right. So that's what we started learning, was that when the gut's not working properly, the brain suffers.
Mhm.
So that's where you absorb all your vitamins, right? That you
Yeah.
need for your brain to work. That's where you absorb all the amino acids to make the neurotransmitters to make the brain work. Um, we also saw this connection that's crazy, that I believe has a lot to do with the sticks, is the liver is the area where you detoxify things. And if you don't have certain vitamins and you don't have certain amino acids, methionine, glutathione, cysteine, sulfur, that's not really amino acid, but you also need a ton of B vitamins. You need iron, you need zinc, all this stuff. If your kids are eating junk and their guts are on fire, they're not going to absorb the nutrients to make the liver detoxify things. So then when you put in the sticks of these heavy metals, you can't get rid of them. And they're going to go somewhere. So it's like this whole big mess that I was looking at my son. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a mess. Um,
Mhm.
so long story short was that I started doing a leaky gut program with him, and he was excelling. I did it with myself because I have another story that I could talk about, my story with my gallbladder, my thyroid. But I started treating myself, and I finally was getting better. And then my husband's like, why don't you just bring it to the practice? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know about this. And he was like, why? Why not? So I brought it to the practice, and it exploded. And I started helping, which they said that was going to happen, but I was kind of like, I'm always a skeptic. So I'm just like, okay. And all of a sudden we were healing guts. And all of a sudden people were like, my chronic fatigue syndrome's gone. I got pregnant. My infertility's gone. My 10 cysts on my ovary, I only have one left. Um, my hypothyroidism's gone. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's a gut body connection. Like, it's like, what
Oh,
is
yeah.
this? And, so that's how I became a leaky gut expert. And then, like you, functional medicine kind of birthed from that movement. And I just dove head first into that. I was like, I want to do this. So that was like 206 credits that I had to do, another 4 years to, um,
But you
yeah.
want that information. Like that's how I felt. It's like I need to know all this so that I can fix us all.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you're talking about parasites, you can go on
Mhm.
Instagram and listen to people tell you how to do parasites. But I can assure you, everyone I listen to, I'm like, no, you're missing like one really important step. They're going to come back, And so I learned that through functional medicine college, you know what I mean? So I have my doctorate in chiropractic, but I also have my degree in functional medicine. So yeah, I wanted to learn that. Like,
It's
I didn't know
addicting.
how to really get rid of parasites. I didn't learn that in chiropractic school or nutrition. And I can go to, I guess, Google or TikTok or Instagram, but they don't even have it totally right.
Mhm.
They're missing, those girls talk about like an important thing, but it's always missing an important step. So like, yeah, I wanted to know. I'm like, how do I get rid of this stuff? Like, all right, we're talking MTHFR and heavy metals and sticks. How do we get rid of it?
Mhm.
And again, there's maybe 3 simple steps, but everybody's missing like that third step, you know? And so that's what I don't really know a lot about homeopathy, except that's what I use with my kids. And I told Christine what I used to do is run to the health food store. There was one guy, Pete. I love Pete. He was a pharmacist,
Oh, yeah, Nature's Nutrition.
Nature's Nutrition. And I was very lucky that he was right near my practice. He still is. And he was like getting frustrated with pharma. And he's just started putting all the natural things in there. Now he has a nice store. And so like I've watched
He has a
him
good
to
selection.
the area. And I used to run in and go, Pete, my
Mhm.
kid has, you know, a stuffy nose, or my kid has a cough, and like, what do I do? And he would have the boron pellets in the cubbies, and we would look for the symptom because we didn't have Google, right? We didn't have it. We
Yeah.
literally look for the symptom and
Oh
we
no, the
find them.
symptom on the tube? Because there's only like one listed, but there's like
No,
100
it's
things
like
in a
he had
tube.
this cubby,
Yeah.
big box. Yeah, and the tubes were in there, and there was a little symptom for
Yeah.
he had symptoms above each one. And then I got myself a homeopathy book, and I was kind of like, all right, but I don't know it as well as you do. That's why I find it fascinating when
It is so
I text
awesome.
you and I'm like, oh, I have this patient, and what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And so we do go back and forth on things with patients. And I absolutely love, I was telling my parents the other day, I was like, I absolutely love functional medicine. Like it's my passion. Like, you know, when you just are so fired up about something
Yeah, that's why you got to keep going because
and
it's like, um,
you're just settled with it. Like, this is what I meant to do. And
yeah.
perhaps if I went to college today and I was 20, um, I'd be in that naturopathic. They didn't have that back then, but
Yeah,
I'd
what
be in
is the
that
difference between functional medicine and a naturopath?
I don't really, so a lot of the schoolings and a lot of the titles to things were very confusing. And I sometimes come across one and I Google it and I'm like, what is the schooling to get to that?
Yeah.
The naturopath doctor seems to be the medical doctor that goes into, I think, it looks like medical school, then naturopath. Uh,
Okay.
so I don't really know. Two naturopaths I use are medical doctors that went more of an alternative route. So they kind of have
Yeah.
the blessings of both worlds in the sense that they can prescribe if they need it. Like say you were,
Like the Banerjees in India, they were medical doctors and homeopaths.
yeah, but I don't know if they're all that way, but I just know that that's one way you can go into schooling for that. Um,
I didn't know if they were interchangeable terms or something like
like
that.
functional medicine practitioner, again, that could be a nurse, that could be a chiropractor, that could be a DO, that could be an MD, that could be a dietitian. You just have, like, as long as you have that licensure, you can apply to the college for that functional. So that's confusing too,
Yeah.
um, you know,
Um,
but
That's awesome.
that's
They're
my
so lucky
story.
to have you, your kids. I mean, and they don't even know how lucky they are because they're so blessed in their health. Um,
No. So we were talking about this yesterday, was it?
a couple days ago.
Yeah. Um, if my kids are listening, which they probably aren't. They sometimes get upset with me and we sometimes have these discussions, or they're curious about things. And it always wraps up with me going, you know what? You guys just don't understand that the fact that you've never had an ear infection, you haven't had strep throat, the antibiotics, I was telling you, they all had an antibiotic once.
That's amazing.
My one son hit his jaw, cracked a tooth, had an abscess. So when he woke up one day, his jaw, he was probably 9 and his jaw was like really big. And we looked in and it was black. And I was like, all right, out of my league.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do here. So we called our dentist. He looked in and goes, yep, abscess. Tooth has to be pulled, but he needs an antibiotic before we pull it. And I was like, oh, he's never had one. And my husband's like, this is what they're there for. I was like, okay. So he had his antibiotic at 9, got his tooth extracted. Uh, the second guy, he got chicken pox at 22 and bronchitis. So he had he had a serious head cold that he caught and it went into his lungs, and then caught chicken pox on top of it. And he was so sick. And so when I brought him into the doctor, he was like, I think you need an antibiotic for the cough and for the double secondary infection, because now you've got this. And I thought, this poor kid has a primary, secondary infection and chicken pox. So we did give him an antibiotic, which cleared up the cough immediately. And then he was able to deal with the chicken pox. So that was you could probably have gone either way on that one, but he was just so sick. So I think that was a good call. And the other child got injured he's a fireman, and he got injured at practice with the hose
Oh,
and
that's
bruised his lung and wound up collapsing. So he was in the hospital with a lung surgery for 2 weeks and needed antibiotics. So that, but they've never had anything. So my point to these stories is they really had just the yearly colds, maybe sometimes the throw up that went around the school.
yeah.
They don't get it. They think they think their childhood is what all the other kids are going through. And I get that's a good thought, right? That's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. What do
everybody's
they
sick,
know? They don't have
get sick
anything.
once a year and we're fine. But they don't understand that some kids are really sick.
Yeah.
You know, my kids don't break out in these rashes. They're not on creams. They're not, you know,
Inhalers and nebulizers, and we did all that.
no.
No
And
way to
so
live.
sometimes, they're in their 20s and we talk and they're just like, they come from that, I guess, a beautiful, ignorant place.
Yeah.
But I always say to them at the end, I'm like, you guys just don't understand. Like, you I just don't know what to say. I was like, I'm proud of it,
Yeah.
but they make these rash decisions or they have these rash conversations with me, where they're coming from a place where they just don't get.
Yeah. Maybe in your life
They had the
experience.
chicken pox, by the way. They're all mad at me. I told Christine they all got it at the same time, and they're all mad at me. They're just like Googling like what it was. Oh my gosh, I could have had a stick. Oh my gosh, do you know all these things I could get because you didn't do this? So they had this whole big thing came to a
I'm
fruition.
shocked that they did that because I had chicken pox, and I mean they were everywhere. They were on my tongue, they were on my scalp, I mean everywhere. But it was really not much to like, I don't know. I was
I
like,
know,
they
but they
did
have
the
never been so sick. Like they've never been really sick. Just like a cold.
nothing is
So
related
this
to
was like they had fever, you know what I mean? They had these pustules all over them. They thought they were never going to go away. They were like,
that.
"Oh my God," because they had them in their 20s, right? When you're and
That's a little bit worse.
and
But
for this generation, like nobody gets them. So they're all friends are like, "Ew, you're 11."
yeah,
And they were,
yeah,
"How could you do this to me, mom?" And um so I was just like that was the first time they were like besides the I can't think if it was before the hospital or after the hospital episode, but really they didn't have anything. So this was the epitome where I was like, oh my gosh, it took you 20 something years to get really sick. Like,
yeah,
calm down. Chickenpox
yeah.
is gonna go away. You're gonna have a little scar. You'll be fine.
One day they're going to appreciate it. It
And they
might take
started
a
Googling
little more
all the
life
sticks and they were
experience.
like, oh mom, like what the, and so,
But
that's
do
what
you think that they'll, even though they're kind of like skeptical or whatever, you think they'll raise their kids like you raised them?
hmm, honestly, you want the honest answer.
Yeah.
Do you think that will depend on who they marry?
Oh yeah,
If they
probably.
were girls, I would say yes, because they're in
Yeah,
control. But when a boy marries a girl,
yeah,
they've got their mother.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I
You could
keep
just
trying to
pray
talk
that.
about value system when you get married. I really think it's an important thing. I really think you have to have the same value system.
Mhm.
Because I just do. I think when you get married and you don't, you'll start fighting. And then those fights will eventually be what ends you in the end. I don't think that stuff goes away. So
Yeah, that's
um,
true.
I try to tell them that, but they said, Ma, do you know how hard it is to find a girl
Mm.
that wants to raise their kid healthy like you in Jersey?
Yeah,
New York because they work in New York. So I'm like, they're there, they're there, they're there. I see them.
yeah.
They come in my practice. So, I don't
Listen,
know.
we're gonna start like a little
I pray all the
service.
time.
I do. I pray a lot that it happens that way because knowing that we're predisposed, I cannot go through that again. Like,
Yeah,
whew, I
I
wouldn't
know. So
think
I
about it.
wanted to bring my story today to you guys because it's what led me to functional medicine today, which I absolutely love. And I've been doing a version of it for 10 years. I have to say a version because it didn't really exist, 10 years ago. It developed and got birthed in, I would say, the last 5 years.
Mm,
So proud to be part of that movement and also, of course, the medical freement movement.
yeah,
And so I've worked with, all types of chronic diseases is really what I deal with. I've got the fibromyalgia, the chronic fatigue, the whole spectrum of Asperger's, anxiety, depression, infertility, all this stuff. So that's what I do, and I'm here to help people, and I want to tell my stories. And when we talk about topics, I want to bring my version into it, how I've helped
Yeah.
patients, give you guys some solutions. But I also want to end this with our aha moment at Trenton. I was so alone in this movement for so long, and I have been mocked by so many people, let alone medical doctors. I have patients that I help, and then that they go to their medical doctor, they tell them, no, I'm a quack, and they come back and they won't do what I said because their doctor told them not to. I have been constantly put down. And just to see the MAHA moms emerge has been so life-changing for me. I can't explain it because I've been fighting this fight
Validating.
alone.
Yeah.
It's validating, but it's also like, I don't know, man. I feel like I have a tribe and an army, and I don't
Yes.
care if I'm not the leader, but I'm in the tribe. I don't have to lead the tribe, but I'm just like, yeah, man, this is awesome. And then
I
to
do. I
see
feel like it's a
Robert
feeling.
Kennedy, go up and try to help us, I'm just like, this is great. People
Yeah.
like Food Babe come up and start talking about the foods and getting to Congress and yelling like, hey, why is their kids cat Kraft macaroni and cheese disgusting in America and totally clean in Europe? Like, this is like awesome. Like, I
Yeah.
am
And she's been
so
saying it for 13 years. I give her
happy.
credit for not giving up because it took 13 years to get somebody to listen to her.
Yep.
'Cause she was who I followed to try to figure out what I was
Yeah,
going to
Chris
eat.
Carr, her, I know I was part of it, but I'm not as popular as them. But yeah, like 13 years to us keep doing this, like getting up every day.
Yeah.
I'm a chiropractor for 27 years, and then this is gonna scare you. I've been a nutritionist for 31. Getting
Wow.
up every day talking about this and people being like, "Ah, you're crazy."
I give you credit.
So I wanna thank you guys for,
Yes,
just
for coming.
igniting my fire and keeping it going, and
Yeah,
you
I'm
were
excited.
there and I was there and all that. I said, I was thinking about this the other day when I said in our first podcast, there was thousands of people at the Trenton. It was like 10,000 people, if not
Yeah.
more. It
Yeah.
was,
I would say
I
definitely
underplayed
six,
that one.
maybe a little bit, maybe somewhere between 6 and 10. It was hard because they were on both sides in the
Yeah.
front. I
It
mean,
was just
they were
people.
everywhere. Yeah, it was amazing.
And that was just, it was something like you said to me, we'll never forget because,
Yeah.
um,
And I feel like it's a family. Like one of the ones that has promised to come on. I didn't know her. I never met her, but she's in our freedom group and she is an ICU nurse. And my father had a medical event. And I was like, listen, I know you're an ICU nurse and you don't know me, but can you just help me? And she did. And I was like, this
yeah.
is awesome. Like I already knew she was awesome by like the speeches she gave and everything, but how we each come through for each other, even though we don't have personal like relationships, just because we're related in this movement, it's like family to me.
I also, this might sound creepy, but I really believe it. I think there's something primitive and tribal about us. I
Mm.
think that like if you don't see a woman and you just hear a story like we are here on YouTube or podcast, you're like, you're empathetic, you care, you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But when we were there and we saw kids in the strollers and kids being harmed and you saw these moms and you heard these stories in person, it was automatically just in me primitively to protect them and to
Mm.
help them. And that's what I feel like us women really are. Like if we were in a compound together and we all lived off the land together, we would tribally feel
Oh,
that we
totally.
have to protect your child just as much as my child. And I do believe that's within us. I do.
How about the woman that we met that was there with her 6 kids
I
by
know.
herself? We were like, what?
Gosh, yes. So
God bless her. Oh
like
my
little kids.
wearing
I
them. She got them everywhere. I mean,
get them everywhere. And we looked at it, was like, I don't even know if I could have brought mine. I was like, I
like,
don't
can I
know.
help you?
Luke would have ran away and I would have lost him. There's
Yeah.
even no way. I was like, how
Yeah.
is she doing this?
I know. That's how I felt. Because my son, I only had one, and I joke with him. I'm like, you were 5 kids in one. That's why there was only one. But yeah, I would have helped. I would have babysat for her all day just because I felt like she was just pulling it off, though. She wasn't afraid.
No, there's some of these MAHA moms that have way more strength than me. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's for
You know?
sure. So, oh, that's awesome. Good stories.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah, good story. Our next podcast, we are planning to dive deep into food dyes
Yes.
and teach you some things about food dyes, give you some solutions and tricks of what you can do. And we're definitely going to look at it a little politically. We're going to try to not, we don't want this podcast to be political, but we are going to look at what laws are popping up and what they're starting to do. So stay
Yeah.
tuned for our next podcast.
Yes. Sounds good. Okay, guys, thanks. Have a good day.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.